Hello, my name is Brian Valladares Garmendia, and today I will be analyzing Franz Schubert's Der Neugierige from his song cycle Die Schöne Müllerin. The main thing I wanted to focus on when I was initially researching this piece was the text painting and how that relates to the harmonies. So I dove in and looked at some of the actual story, and essentially, like many pieces in this era, it is based off of love and romance. And in this case, it is more of a longing type of love, um, where he is unsure if the person loves him back. And at the beginning, it's kind of just filled with curiosity. But once we get into the midway to ending section, he gets more and more unsure and feels like he is yearning for an answer. This piece gets a little interesting because it has a couple different time signatures and a few different key signatures. As for the form, it's fairly simple. It goes A, B with an A prime being because it's similar to the first part of the music, but it is in a different key signature. Or not key signature, a different time signature. The beginning of the music starts very simple. In 2/4, it's a bunch of 1 and 5 chords. As described by Beach in his article, an analysis of Schubert's Der Neugierige, a tribute to Greta Cross, he describes how the time signature does go from simple to a slightly more complex one. Though it may not look complex as it is just in 3/4, the melody is what makes it more complex. It goes through a few different top key signatures, being G major, D major, which are two closely related keys. G major being the main key, although in the original key it would have been B. But E flat is a little bit farther of a major, which I found interesting because it just seems kind of out of nowhere, and it happens just for a few measures sprinkled in. But it is shown by its accidentals. Going to that E flat major section, like I said, midway through the piece, measures 35 through 38 out of this 55 measure piece. The reason I decided to analyze it in E flat major is because when listening to it, I heard a 1 chord here. That's just what it felt like it tonicized in. And looking off of the actual flats and naturals in this section, it gives us a flat, B flat, and an E flat, which are in this key, and an F natural. So when I was looking at this piece initially, this was the part that stood out to me because of how fast it looked like it transitioned from chord to chord. And I was slightly correct in that assumption, as it really does just move chord to chord. But it was a little simpler than I initially thought, as it just goes from the tonic to the predominant, from the 1 to the 4 repeatedly, having a little 2 here, and then the 5. But it's really just bouncing back and forth between this. Another point in Beach's article is that this section is kind of used to convey uneasiness, and I find that with the text painting, I think that I would agree, as in this part, he says, "These 2 words contain for me the whole world." This is when he is asking for the answer and when he is yearning to desperately know if it's a yes or a no as to whether the other person loves him or not. So I think this section is really when he's kind of going crazy of sorts because he needs that answer of that yes or no, and it's really conveyed through all of this music, as it goes for another 4 measures, just delving into the same thing, delving into the same words, he's desperately wanting to know. And the harmonic analysis, though simple, going just 1 to 4, it doesn't go to 5. It doesn't give us a nice like cadence right up until about here, and that's when we start moving into the next part of the music. So the feeling of uneasiness really just doesn't actually end. It has a feeling of a short ending, but the music keeps going. The next part I wanted to talk about was this is nearing the end section because I found it interesting that they used a few diminished 7 chords. It's just really something that stood out to me as it's not used all of the time. And this is a secondary dominant 7 going into the 7, and I feel like that just, it was used in a way to add to that feeling of uneasiness within the initial key, so that even though we're out of that weird E flat key, we still don't feel like we're grounded in the G major key as we're going through different chords. And same thing goes all the way over here as we have another secondary dominant. It just really makes it feel like it's going somewhere, but it's not. And just at the ending, I think I saw a lot of this pedal tone, and it's another thing I found very interesting throughout all of it, just because it just continues to stay on that tonic. All throughout, I think the text painting in this piece was really good, and I feel like using these chords in that sort of progression was very well in the text painting.